Coming off of the analysis for the Spyro the Dragon mobile games got me thinking, without music, those games really lack the life and energy the series is known for. Now, while a soundtrack doesn't make a game, it is a very important part to the puzzle, and it always has been since the origin of the medium. I'd argue much more important than some people give it credit for. Music itself is a fairly subjective topic to attempt in-depth discussion for, as we all prefer different things. Some people enjoy the ballads of Iron Maiden, or even something a little lighter like, say, Gorillaz, while others who can't stand that kind of music may enjoy some Willie Nelson country, or even some classical piano by Franz Liszt. Or if you're myself, then all of that sounds like a whopper playlist. But if there's something I think we can all agree on, it's that the genre of video game music is one of the most diverse and truly fascinating genres out there. I listen to game music all the time, which is why I'd like to explore it today. At the dawn of video game history, games were simple. Blocky sprites and little sound, reserved for the more important aspects of a game, such as destroying an enemy or clearing a stage. Sometimes these sounds would come from the console itself, as opposed to the TV. You'll find that the vast majority of these games, while classic and charming, lack a sense of emotion. There is really nothing here, it is just a game put simply, and there is nothing wrong with that. But as time has gone on, technology has evolved faster than anyone could have expected, and now it's a requirement for sound and music in games to be on point. Both playing and watching, bit-crushed orchestras to atmospheric ambience is all so important to each experience, which is why I want to delve deeper into this topic to learn why that is, beyond the basic answer of because it sounds better than silence. Now, the way I've always viewed games music as a genre is split into two categories: game music and music. That's not a divide of genre, it's a divide of gameplay and non-gameplay. Game music is what you get while you're sprinting through an intense level towards a final boss, while music is the fulfilling melodies heard for defeating the game itself. So let's start with game music. Any good game should be able to stand on its own with nothing more than the meat of its experience, the gameplay. Take away any classic OST from a game, and while it'll feel a little odd at first, it should still be fun. If it's not, then you've got a problem. Cases such as these are closer to being albums with a bonus game inside, and that's if the music is also good. But for most examples of an enjoyable bare-bones title, some great game music to go along with it can just add so much more to the overall gameplay. But why is that? It goes much deeper than just including some great music, because great music is defined by a personal opinion. And sure, you could technically break down and determine if something is good or not, but that's not the point. The point is that the sole responsibility of video game music is to create atmosphere with the correct tone. Atmosphere being the mood of a location or the player, while tone represents the situation at hand, and they should bounce off of each other to ultimately improve the gaming experience. So how are we going to test this? I'm thinking we should take a look at a game with a great soundtrack. Maybe something along the lines of Castlevania 4 on Super Nintendo. A personal favourite track of mine from this game is the Chandelier Room. As you can see, this is an intense platforming section much later into the game, and while the creaky swinging noises would suit just as scary on their own with no music, this piece really helps to amplify the atmosphere. Tonality is also good here. The fast pace subliminally keeps the player on their toes as they're forced to stand on a sharp edge ready to jump, we're off to a good start here. Another good example is the theme from Traverse Town in the original Kingdom Hearts. The warmer, tavern-esque vibe suits the location, which is primarily a hub area but still a level itself, so you get that mystery lurking within the music to encourage exploration. With a town setting, a player is already programmed to explore for items or characters, and even though this area isn't entirely safe, it retains that protective mood and gives this location character. When you run into trouble, however, the tempo picks up again for a new track with a familiar feeling, yet still different enough for a contrasting situation. Another great fight track from Kingdom Hearts is this one. I'd say that just from listening to it, you'd be able to hear just how much colder and serious this is in comparison. So what happens when we take this track designed for an intense moment and swap it with the music for another intense moment back in Castlevania? It actually fits kind of well, I think, which would prove that as long as the music works with the theme, that it's not as important. But as you can see by replacing it, this theme doesn't work as well here as the tone is all wrong. Both are composed for stressful moments such as a difficult level or boss, but in Castlevania still evokes a feeling of paranoia, fear of what is going to come after this part of the level, while in Kingdom Hearts there is no time for paranoia because our opponent is already in front of us. Alternatively, look at something like Sticker Brush Symphony in Donkey Kong Country 2. Shouldn't the music for a stage as confusing and threatening as this have a more nerve-wracking tone? I'm sure you could find some that fit, but ironically, the calmness of the atmosphere conflicts so much with the tone that they actually work so well together, delivering what is a very relaxing track, resulting in more stress for the player with an illusion of harmony. These two examples really just prove the level of depth we're talking here for each piece of music, and how crucial it is to nail both tone and atmosphere. If the very purpose of playing a game is to become immersed and transport our minds into a work of fiction, then these fine details need to be executed correctly. A recent example of this not working so well was in the Crash Insane trilogy. A large majority found the music underwhelming to say the least. This is because the overall atmosphere and tone weren't gelling together. Look at the original music for the Boulder levels. It's impactful and booming with a fast pace to get your adrenaline running, and the lighter chimes thrown in work with the overall loony theme of the game. So switching out for lighter instruments all round converts the track into a comedic one, which doesn't work. It hits all the same notes, but also fights with the tone of the level, causing the atmosphere to be completely lost, and it just feels wrong for the player. Is the level still enjoyable? Yes, it is, because it was built well, but without some strong music to accompany it, it's no longer memorable in my opinion. You know, that's an interesting choice of words, because what made it, or any other level, memorable in the first place? I'll never forget the first time I laid eyes on Sonic 2 at my cousin's house when I was much younger. The Emerald Hill theme is so bouncy and representative of the game's colourful and cartoony style that I remember the music and colour palette more than the level itself. Next, the Chemical Plant theme races in sounding speedier thanks to the gameplay with turbo pads, and as a player being more comfortable with the controls after the first two stages, being able to navigate more effectively. While I never played beyond that point until well over 10 years later, I still feel nostalgic for those tunes, as many people will for games they played as a kid. But even as adults, we're still able to uncover some truly memorable games, certainly aided by their soundtracks. Red Dead Redemption is one of my favourites to bang on about. This actually features a fairly dynamic soundtrack with wonderfully composed period pieces. If the player is just out wandering the desert, you're not going to hear much, mainly a whistle of wind through the sand, if anything at all, with the occasional trumpet or percussion instrument imitating the wildlife, creating the perfect mood for the given situation. An important factor in creating memorable game music is that it feels like it belongs, going back to that Crash example. With certain details added correctly to imitate and blend with the environment, it really boosts immersion for the player because we can feel like we're there, no matter the genre or artistic style of the game. Another example of a dynamic soundtrack I love is Jak 2. I used to stand around in this game listening to the ambience of the city. The music here can be broken into 3 levels: neutral for walking around and initial exploring, heating up as enemies begin to interfere, and finally, action. There is typically a natural progression, but some situations jump from 1 to 3 and can genuinely scare the shit out of you. An increased tempo along with some heavier instruments give the situation meaning and help to convey its story to the player. Storytelling is another fine art form as delicate as game design and all it encompasses, including music. Fictional narrative is probably the finest art form in my opinion, because there are just so many ways to go about doing so, and when it's done well, it can blow your fucking mind. So we've discussed game music for gameplay moments, but now it's on to talking about the other music in our favourite games. The tracks that tell the stories before and after major events, during cutscenes and things like that. Sure, storytelling isn't and shouldn't be limited to these moments. I think all of the tracks we've looked at today all tell their own stories, but for the sake of keeping this simple, there is a definitive storytelling subgenre within game music that needs examining. Back to Red Dead. At the end of Act 1, we cross over into Mexico and are left to find our own way, with the story of redemption to save one's family by ultimately working for the enemy. To wind up in a far-off land is pretty heavy, but what makes this truly memorable is the track that plays, Far Away. With some great lyrics and the calming pace, this plays out as you start traversing the Mexican landscape, and it makes you feel sorrow for John Marston. A moment of no important gameplay made into one of the biggest moments of the entire game. It's fucking brilliant because it makes you think. From Rockstar Games to Naughty Dog, 2 juggernauts of the industry, we'll swing over to Uncharted for a look. One of my favourite moments from the 3rd game is the Rub Al Khali, as Nate becomes stranded in the desert. As he prepares to venture forth, the music booms with a grand display as the camera zooms out to show the impossibility of the situation, and as quickly as it comes on, the music quiets down from courage and grandeur into desperation and almost completely stops. But it doesn't, just like our protagonist who is still going. Soon the dominant sound is Nate's feet in the sand. It takes over the audible portion of the experience before it becomes almost hypnotic and poetic. Mid-game storytelling of this manner is very special and not as common in my experience. Mostly you'll find opening and credit themes deliver some powerful emotions to both prepare the player and break them down in the final moments. Just watch this.
We are outcasts. Even so, we keep the tribe's rituals. Otherwise, we might become like the faithless old ones, who turned their backs on the goddess. But their wickedness doomed them. To us, were left the splendors of creation. Beasts of air, water, earth, and steel.
Did you feel that? Chills run down your spine. It's storytelling done right, and we're not even at the title screen yet. Symphony of the Night. We all know this soundtrack is one of the best. Such an impactful opening with the castle, our initial encounter with Dracula, and then subsequent backstory. It lets the player know the severity of events taking place, with Richter Belmont going missing and throughout the game, Alucard discovering the truth of his mother and father's stories. This entire series is great at storytelling with some great credit sequences too. From the original and getting back to Castlevania 4 recall from earlier, after a long and challenging night of battling the trials of the castle, we get the satisfactory image of seeing it crumble to the ground, with a flashback of our experience. This is easily one of my favourite credit tracks. Compared to the chilling soundtrack elsewhere, we're greeted with warmth to end off a great experience, and it's gorgeous. There are so many others I wish I had the time to include here, credit sequences and accompanying music that tells, completes, and even continues forwards the tales of their games, usually not bounded by the overall quality of the game itself. The mark of great music in games being used as a story device is its bond with the overall story itself. You want to feel somewhat accomplished, or at least leaving with some value, even if it leans towards more experiences down the line, so credit themes always have some kind of positive vibe hidden in there, even for the saddest of video game endings. So, what does all of this mean? We've gone over how important game music is, and how it toys with you as a player, a consumer of the medium. But, for a concluding statement, why is video game music so important? Why does it make us feel so much? I think that's our answer. Feeling emotion. This entire video has been discussing how music makes us feel playing, how it makes levels and locations, cutscenes and events feel a certain way. Video game music's main purpose is to make us feel emotions of every kind. We're indulging in the lives of fantasy characters, role-playing and transporting ourselves into these stories that, at the end of the day, aren't reality. These characters can't feel or love. We can design them to think, but that's rarely polished. The games can't feel real on their own, so our favourite soundtracks are the subliminal tool used to make us feel things. It's like a trick, to be honest. Have you ever watched a comedy movie trailer where a lame joke is made, followed with silence?
To the Batmobile! Dang it.
To the invisible jet! Dang it.
That's almost a trigger to tell the brain to laugh, and it's a technique so overdone throughout the years that still works when done well. So video game music is that trigger, artificially programmed to make you laugh or cry, or even feel nothing at all as long as it fits the overall tone of a game. The music should invoke emotion out of the player, which is a point I'd like to end on. While there are certainly some examples earlier on, the more recent you look along the video game timeline, the more likely you are to find a lot of soundtracks including real music. You know, actual licensed songs. Of course we can't complain for games like Guitar Hero, or even for a realistic setting such as radio stations in Grand Theft Auto, but I find it a lot less impressive and even forgettable when a real song is used over an original creation. It's not all bad. Blasting boats to Symphony for the Devil in Black Ops is fun of course, but that's because of its fast tempo and mood fit the tone, as well as its period relevancy. But throwing in another Nam song into a game such as Watch Dogs 2 just to be cool, sure it is cool, but for a game that is mostly designed to be stealthy, it doesn't fit the situation. This game has some great original tracks, but instead, they chose to use this here and make the player want to run around and kill everything that moves. Not the best way to approach this mission. It conflicts and doesn't work, as much as I love this song. My point here being that even though it's fun driving around Los Santos with some great music playing, blasting shit, this doesn't leave an impact. It's not memorable, and I think that's a dangerous line to walk. Simply plopping in some great music isn't enough to bring out that emotion in the player, and I think it's one of the reasons I don't enjoy, or even remember playing newer, modern games as much compared to old ones. With less or even no original music for those key moments, they're a lot less effective and a lot less memorable, defeating the entire purpose of video game music. Sure, I'll think of the game when I hear a familiar song from it on the radio or somewhere else, but I'm remembering the song, an amazing album with a bonus game inside. Without the game subconsciously telling me when to feel a certain way through music, it only hurts itself in the long run, in my opinion. Now some people are probably going to say, Jesus, just feel for yourself, you lazy bum. But that's not my point. My point is that original, well-crafted game soundtracks help us as humans to remember the importance of emotion. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Do you think music is the reason we feel so fondly for some of our favourite gaming moments, or does it have some other importance elsewhere within games? Also, don't forget to let me know some of your most emotional game songs with a comment down below, followed with liking, subscribing and sharing the video. I'm Square Eye Jack and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.